All right, I am excited finally to get together with our friends at RFL Wealth Management. And I have with me this morning the CEO, Saad Nadeem. Saad, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me here, Mark. It's a great pleasure.
Look, I know you're really busy, and right before we started this recording, you told me that you're flying out, you're visiting a bunch of places and
Mm,
build this venture out. And it's exciting to see a fellow entrepreneur and a CEO kind of in the hustle, trying to build out
mm,
this venture of yours. And I relate to it absolutely 100% because of kind of the similar paths that we've been taking, especially with me building out the IMG conference. So what I'd love to do is just for everyone that's watching and for our audience and for all the IMGs, ITPs, the nurses, the dentists, the pharmacists, the students that follow us on social media, we really want them to get to know RFL a little bit more personally. So that's what I'd love to do over the next 20, 30, 40 minutes or so.
for sure.
So for those people that are watching this for the first time and who don't know what RFL Wealth Management is, can you maybe walk us through an introduction, tell us what you guys do?
Sure. Yeah. So RFL stands for Rich Fulfilling Life. That's number one. And essentially, what we do at our core is we help internationally trained physicians live a rich, fulfilling life in the most tax efficient way. That's your one sentence. Very simple in terms of what it is we do. Our job is very simple. Or as I guess it's very complicated, but we try to make it as simple as
Yeah.
possible for our internationally trained physicians. Yeah, so our goal really is like to figure out who you are today financially, what and then figure out exactly what your rich, fulfilling life is, and we want to help you live that rich, fulfilling life, not at some future when I turn 65 or I'm going to retire and then I'm going to start living. No, we want to live right now. We want to live a rich, fulfilling life today. And how do we start building that out in the most tax efficient way? And that's at its core. That's what we do. That's a North Compass.
That's great. You know what? It's interesting is it's the niche that you've carved out for. Like in the last number of years, I've connected with a lot of wealth advisors from banks, and I've sat on boards as well. And they've always focused on physicians. I'm curious to know what made you kind of carve out a niche just for IMGs or ITP specifically.
Um, so I mean, I'll just give you the truth. I don't know, in 2026, it's the most politically correct way, to say this, but 10 years ago, 11 years ago, when I first started this business, I started off as an advisor. And one of my mentors at the time told me that you can try to go to like medical clinics around the city and invite them out to like a dinner seminar or something. So I took that to heart, and I ended up door knocking the entire city of Toronto. So I
Mm.
started from Milton, 401 and James Snow Parkway, and I went all the way till the end of Scarborough. So like every major road, Dairy, Britannia, Eglinton, Burnhamthorpe, Dundas, Lakeshore. So every street going east and west, every street going north and south. So you start at Winston Churchill, and then Erin Mills, and then Mavis, and then here Ontario, and then Dixon, and then Eglinton. So you go all the way to Scarborough. So that whole thing took me about like 9 months to do. It was very painful. And if it wasn't for my wife Amara, I would have quit a long time ago. But every time I was out there, I was doing it 5 days a week. So I really put my heart into it to make sure, like, hey, I have something of value that can help. But so that's the way I approached it. At the end of the 9 months, I was like, okay, well, I can't do this for the rest of my life. 9 months out, just door knocking medical clinics and stuff. So when one of the ideas that came to me is like, hey, let's just look at who actually became a client over these last 9 months. And when I looked at all the people who became clients, I didn't even know this was a term at that point, to be honest. I just realized that every single person who worked with me was a doctor of color. Not a single white doctor wanted to work with me. So many people would be disheartened by that, or things like that. I just took that as probably one of the greatest opportunities of my lifetime, where I started interviewing them. So many of them, I would say almost all of them till today, are still clients of ours at
Oh,
RFL. 10 years later. I ended up interviewing them, and that's when I found out. And they told me like, oh yeah, we're actually called like IMGs and ITPs, and this is whole thing out there that like we come from other countries. And I started really digging deep into it, really just learning and understanding about them. I think that whole process took another year to really figure out, like, who are you, why do you come here, why do you come to Canada, why is this better than UK or the US or the Middle Eastern countries, or back home in, say, Pakistan, India, or something like that. Like, so I really just got fascinated by that entire story. And then now, 11 years later, we are
Wow.
the number one wealth management company in the country for internationally trained physicians.
That's
So,
amazing. I love that story. There's a lot of grit and hustle in that. I mean, that's the true entrepreneurial path. There was no guidebook or a roadmap for you. You kind of just hustled all your way through. I can relate with you on that on so many levels. But the other thing that the stark reality is what you mentioned as well is all of your clients are of color, which might say a lot about just the country as a whole, just the way we
mhm.
perceive people. Um, it's interesting. I feel like we need to unwrap that a little bit more, but we're gonna. I don't want to. I don't want to stir the pot. What
Yeah.
I want to know is, so what makes you guys different from? I think you kind of alluded to this a little bit, but how are you unique compared to some of the other wealth advisory firms? What more can you do for a client that these other guys are failing to do?
So the biggest gaps that we find in the marketplace today, number one is, I would say probably conflict of interest in terms of, like, compensation. So, nothing is free. I like to say, if, you pay peanuts, you get monkeys, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, every there's a value, fair price to be paid for the service that you're receiving. And I believe that there's a massive conflict of interest in there when people are charging like AUM fees and things like that. So it's like, just because I have more money, I should be paying more fees. That doesn't really make any sense.
Yeah.
So we got rid of that. We are a flat only fee. Very transparent. This is our fee model. We have 3 tier systems in terms of, like, eradicating that conflict of interest. So that's number one. Number two, I think the biggest challenge with ITPs, when it comes to, like, all the other different firms, the banks included, is that you are not their number one clientele.
Hmm.
They have hundreds and thousands of different people that are clients,
Right.
right? And what I mean by that is, like, client profiles.
Yeah.
So one is an engineer, one is a laborer, one's a 9 to 5 guy, one's an IT specialist, one is this, one's a business owner, one's this, one's this. So what we found is, you can't service somebody at its highest capacity if you are so diverged into, like, all these different things.
That makes sense.
So what we decided to do is, like, hey, what if I just say no to, as a company, to like 99.99999% of the Canadian population? We don't want them as clients. We don't want to spend any time on them. We don't want to learn about their problems. But what we do want to do is, we want to spend 100% of our time learning about your problems as an internationally trained physician. So what does your journey look like? What happens when you actually come here? How do you get licensed? What's the process of starting your own clinic? How does that happen? How do your MPCs work? If you're a dentist, how do your DPCs work? How do you get the holding company? So, like, we're so entrenched into your journey in terms of,
Love
like,
that.
how this actually comes together. And I think that's probably one of our different differentiators is one of the biggest comments we get is, it feels like you already know me. It's like, yeah, we already know you because we've done this thousands of times at this point, and I know where you are headed. So before you're going to hit those roadblocks, let us just figure it out for you, so there are no roadblocks. Because I think the biggest challenge that ITPs have, that I think many other firms don't realize, is that ITPs don't have the same time as normal Canadians do. Like, a Canadian physician who grew up here, started practicing maybe by 29, 30 years old, and now he has like a whole 35, 40 years ahead of him to actually work and figure it out. A lot of internationally trained physicians are coming here in their 40s.
Mid-career, exactly.
They're already married. They already have 3 kids, 4
Yeah.
kids. So what? So now I have to figure out, how does my medical practice work? and then figure out this very intense, crazy, complex financial structure that I have over here. Then I also have to be a mother, a father, a husband, a son to my parents back home. Like, so how am I juggling all of this?
Yeah.
And I think, it's a long-winded answer to your very simple question, but I think these are the reasons why so many physicians all across the country choose us. It's like, to be fair, like, back in the day, if you were working with like one of the major banks or something like that, we weren't going to get you as clients because like we didn't know the journey, we didn't know all of those things. Now it's like, it doesn't matter who you're working with, you're going to choose RFL once you actually experience RFL, because of the whole encompassing body. Like, our North Compass is to help you live a rich, fulfilling life. How we do that is that flat fee service planning, we have investments, we have insurance, we have taxes, we have CPA teams that do personal corporate taxes, make sure the planning works with the accounting, make sure the investments are making sure that tax is minimized on the accounting side, right? So everybody's talking to each other. And that entire piece together is, I think, what makes RFL so different, and probably the number one choice for internationally trained physicians.
Well, there's tremendous value in that. So it's not just wealth advisory anymore. You're almost a one-stop shop for the IMG ITP and that's true. Most people, when banks step in, not to say that the banks aren't bad, because they provide their own services and whatever, but specifically to the audience that you're catering and to the services and needs that they have, it's refreshing to know that you understand their journey primarily, so that then you can cater your services to them. And it sounds like you guys been doing a great job at this. You talked about this just a little bit, but what do you think? I know you talked about the IMG ITP coming here with a spouse and kids, and they have elderly parents back home, and that's very typical. They're mid-career, they come here when they're late 40s, 50s, some of them in their 60s, and trying to pivot, right? They're coming from all parts of the world, especially with the policies that have been changing in Canada recently. So we got a lot of NHS doctors coming from the UK, for example, bringing a ton of money over and all this stuff. What do you think is the biggest financial mistake, or maybe financial hurdle, that you're seeing these types of physicians making?
So that's a great question. And easily the biggest hurdle. So if you talk about early journey, right? So they just came to Canada and they probably just started practicing maybe in the last like few years, 2-3 years. The biggest, mistake that they make is they buy a big house. It's so simple, right? It's like, oh my God,
look, the Joneses, I gotta can't be a surgeon and have a little duplex.
Yeah, and honestly, like, and we've seen this journey because now we have enough data, over 11 years of data to see like how our clients have fared, because I always tell our clients, like, hey, we're not magicians, right? We're here to give you your options. We're going to make sure you know the pros and cons of everything that you're doing. But at the end of the day, you're still going to make your decision because, it's your rich, fulfilling life. If your rich, fulfilling life consists of having a 5-bedroom house, $3 million on year one of you just started working in Canada, we'll tell you probably shouldn't do it, but at the end of the day, we're not babysitting you, right? You can still obviously go ahead and do that. I think that's the biggest mistake. So many times the conversation actually goes about, hey, let's maybe not do that.
So you're talking about the big purchases. The biggest mistake people are making, these doctors are making, is going out and getting these, the Porsche 911, the $4 million house, something like that.
Right in the beginning. And I think that's such a detriment to your future, because your mortgage payment is not, we had a cardiologist, senior cardiologist making like $800K, but he's living off $800K. So a guy who's probably working at McDonald's earning $30,000 but can save $5,000 a year is better off than you, because the second you stop practicing, you're going broke. But
he's blowing so after tax, all his income, he's spending it, is what you're telling me.
Because his wife wanted a $3.5 million house, and he wanted to make sure he gets her that. And then he's into like having some nice like new bikes. Then he wants the nice car. And by the time you're doing all of that, I still remember that conversation. He's like, yeah, I need about $500,000 a year to live in my retirement. I want to be done by about 60. He was like 42, 43 at the time. And I'm like, okay, so how much are we saving towards this goal? He's like, yeah, I can probably manage to save about $4,000 a month. So I'm like, okay, so let me get this right. So you want to save 50 grand a year for the next 18 years, and you want $500,000 a year of income after taxes for the next 25 years. Did I hear that correctly? He's like, yeah, that's what I want. I'm like, okay, well, we're obviously not the right people for you, right? Because we're not magicians here, So But I think if you can have those, like, I think the biggest thing is, it's not like we never tell people like not what to do. But I think if you can tell people, and I think that's one of the key qualities at RFL as well, we're so selective in the people we bring into the company, because like our staff, I believe, lives a rich, fulfilling lives ourselves. That's one of the values that we look for before we hire you, and because that's the values that we want to be able to instill in all of our clients.
Right.
And what I mean by that is, it's not like we want to tell you what not to do, but I think there's a right way to approach those types of conversations. And if we can tell you, like, hey, if we do it another way, your future might be so much better. And we're not saying not buy that $3 million house, but I'm just saying, maybe let's have some assets, maybe have some, emergency funds, maybe have some of these things set up. And about 3 years time, 4 years time, let's upgrade at that time. But now you'll feel a lot better, because it's not like, you know the thing is, like, social media and all of these things, people, they tell us like money, 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 like,
You got to
but
live up to the hype, you know? You got
you
to
gotta,
play up the image.
yeah, but I mean, it eats up your peace of mind.
Yeah.
It gives you a lot
True.
of anxiety.
True.
And that's what we want to, keep people away from. So I think that's the biggest hurdle. Just
And
stay away from the big purchases.
I don't think that advice applies to just IMGs or ITPs. I just think anybody that
Everybody.
every physician or even anyone that's making that kind of money,
Yeah.
you're tempted to want to spend it and buy the luxury items and all that stuff. But there is something to be said about being financially literate, one, and being financially responsible, especially if you want to enjoy retirement. Because physicians, like most people, I'm pretty sure most people don't know this, but physicians don't earn a pension. They have to make sure that they save up if they want to enjoy retirement. And that's why, sadly, you tend to see doctors still working into their 70s and 80s. And as much as they say,
Yeah.
I love, the work, yeah, it's probably because you can't retire. Now, not all of them, but I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure a number of them are having to work because they have to again, keep up with the image, perhaps.
Exactly. Like, I mean, so one general rule of thumb that we even have in our home is, whatever you're trying to buy, amazing, you should do that. But the general rule of thumb, even in our home, that we like to tell our clients as well, is, can you buy twice? Can you buy twice comfortably? Or if you can, if the answer is no, because if you say like, hey, can I buy a $3 million house? It's like, great. Can you buy two of them at the same time? Okay, no, I probably can't. What if you buy like a $1.5 million house? Can you buy those twice? Yeah, I can definitely buy two of those. Okay, yes, sir. Let's buy the $1.5 million house, right? Because I think just even following that general rule of thumb, it'll give you a lot less anxiety. Like, oh, I can't call in sick today, or I can't do this, or I can't go on vacation because I have to make sure I earn this much money, and then I have to pay the mortgages. That's not the life you want to live.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good thing to kind of keep in mind. Can you buy twice? And a second one, kind of what you said is, working because you have to, not because you want to.
Yeah.
And I think that's huge for us. I would proudly say that every single one of our clients, has a clear map of like, okay, this is the day I can choose to work. None of them are going to stop working. Like I like to say, right? We're all like type A personalities. So you're going to keep busy. You're not just going to stay home and watch Netflix all day. You want to keep busy. You want to keep fresh. You want to have your brain challenged. So you're going to be working. But it's a big difference when you're now working in 3 days a week, 2 days a week, 5 days a week, when it's like with nothing to do. But now I'm going to be off for the next month because me and my family are going away somewhere. So much different life, same income, same profession,
Peace of mind.
but peace of mind, living a rich, fulfilling life. I think those values are not the sexy values in today's culture, but like I think if you can apply them to your life, they'll go a long way.
I feel like you might have already answered my next question, because when I asked you earlier what the biggest challenge is that you're seeing, or biggest mistake, what then would you consider to be, what's the most common goal that you think most of your clients are actually striving towards?
Definitely, retirement, financial independence, right? I think that's the number one thing. The second one is definitely, making sure that the kids' educations are paid for. That's a huge one. As maybe the listeners know or don't know, the only one account that exists in Canada are ESPs. And you're not going to pay for your kids undergrad and postgrad with a RESP account that you can only save 25, like, $100 a year for. So you need different strategies. You need to be able to do different things to be able to support that.
Right.
So those would be the two biggest ones: retirement and children's education.
Um, Before we dive into the next set of questions about the conference and RFL's involvement, I'm curious to know, because you talked about it before. I know obviously the majority of your clientele are physicians, IMGs, ITPs. You did mention dentists. Are there any other types of professionals that you guys work with?
No, not at this point. Like I said, we are in no rush to keep expanding.
That's a good point. That's
Uh,
great. That's great.
yeah,
You're not in any rush to expand. I think you guys, which tells me you're pretty busy with the clientele you have right now.
we are extremely busy. um, and that's why my whole motto has always been, from the beginning, everybody's trying to take a shortcut in life, but
Mhm.
what you don't realize is shortcut is the long way.
Mhm.
um, and I've been running a turtle race for a very, very long time. I've been behind, from peers and stuff like that for a very long time, but now we're the number one wealth management company for ITPs in the country. So with that same mindset, it's like, hey, we're not going to expand into a new market like pharmacists or nurses or whoever else until we can fully understand their journey, what their problems are.
Uh,
Because, the biggest thing is like, from the outside, it might feel like, it's all the same thing. Why wouldn't you just go do it? Just get more clients. But I'm like, no, you don't understand.
not the same.
Our dedication to helping these people is at a level. It's that attention to detail that's gotten us this far. So it's only now that we've broken into the dentist market in the last year. So my new book is actually coming out very soon, I think in the next month or so. So there's already, my first book is Tax Free MD, obviously for the physicians. So my second book is actually now coming out in the next month or so, Tax Free Dentist.
Mhm.
But that's coming after like another 2-3 years of research and what goes into them, how do they work, what's their problems? Because dentists can, if they can sell their practices, unlike physicians, they can take advantage of lifetime capital gains exemption. They can set a family trust. They can do a whole bunch of other things that physicians cannot do. Right. So it's like, okay, so now it's only when I understand exactly what their problems are, how we're going to solve them, what's the service they're going to receive from us. Once we figured it all out, that's when we'll actually go into the other market. And from my standpoint, I got at least another 40 years in me. So maybe every decade we'll add another another service.
That's great. I mean, I know you told me about your team and then expanding. I mean, the beauty of having a business like yours is, as the CEO, and we were talking about this before we started the session, but there's always opportunities for you to even bring on people, and help them. But again, if you're in no rush and your plate's already full, and everybody, including your, like, the last thing you ever want to do is water down the service for your clientele because you're too busy trying to expand. Because you see that in industry all the time, where
All the
businesses try
time.
to just expand, and then everybody that's already part of that clientele base, they get the short end of the stick.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. So no, exactly right. Like, the other biggest thing as well is, if I expect, obviously we can bring in somebody who's a specialist. We could partner up with you. You seem like an amazing person who would have so much knowledge. But here's the way I look at it. Um, for me to expand will require more and more of my time. That will take away more and more of my time from my kids,
yeah,
which is a cost I'm not willing to pay. I'd
agree.
rather just make it slow and steady. We're so busy. We're a staff of over 35 people now. Um, and not a single week this week has anybody been able to actually just be like, oh, this is an easy week. um, it's that doesn't happen for us. So our books are there, our podcasts are there, our conferences are there, our dinner seminars are there, our digital ads are there. We are so many spaces, and when somebody comes across us, they're like, yeah, we want to work with them. So we're really, really busy, and that's why we're finally ready to move into the dentist market. We've been able to help quite a lot of them over the last year. So I'm like, okay, new book time. So I guess maybe you'll know when we're ready to move into a new service, when the book is coming out. uh,
Apologies for that. Well, that's kind of good because this kind of segues into my next set of questions. It's about the conference. So, So I'm sure you already know, like when we started this conference, the IMG conference, it started as a one-day event back in 2024. It started because the national landscape was changing in terms of how policies were adopting and opening up opportunities for IMGs and ITPs. I always tell people that the pandemic had a silver lining in that in the midst of all the sadness and the deaths and everything else that was happening around the world, we realized how bad the infrastructure was when it came to the healthcare workforce. And I'm not even talking about physicians. We're talking about nurses, dentists, pharmacists, and everybody,
Everybody.
right? So, and I've been in this space for nearly 15 years. I've been working with physicians as soon as I graduated from medical school, I've been helping other doctors and helping med students kind of get through their exams and helping them with other areas of their life just to move forward in their careers. And I, personally took a side back seat at wanting to even pursue medicine myself. I mean, I'm a bit like you, a bit of an entrepreneur, and so I ended up going
Mm.
back to business school and studying that side of medicine. And so when the conference was launched, it was launched with the purpose of really just being a platform and a beacon, right? A catalyst, if you want to call it that, because it was meant to bring together everybody that was smarter than me, that knew the right information, because I knew a lot, but I didn't know enough. And so it made sense to bring those that were credible, right? That had the valued information that the audience needed. And so when we started it in year one, we started with just physicians. And we realized that a one-day event was not enough. There was so much information that we needed to still discuss. And so when we brought it back the subsequent year, we took it to 2 days. And we always had one stage. And then I realized there's still a lot of information, even over 2 days. And people were complaining that they didn't get learned about this and they didn't get to hear about that. And what was interesting is then finding out that there was a lot of our audience was bringing their spouses, and or even people just saw the ads and they showed up, but they weren't a physician. They were a nurse or a dentist or a pharmacist. And we got a lot of students as well, kids that are trying to decide, what do I do after high school? Or, I finished my undergrad and I couldn't get into medical school. Now what? Right. And so I thought, well, then the conference needs to provide a little bit more for all of these audiences, because, needless to say, the last thing I wanted to do was build this massive kind of behemoth vehicle, but not provide the same level of service, if you want to call it that, to the audience, right? And so I looked around and spoke to a lot of organizations and looked and checked to see what other associations and other people in the space that catered to these audiences were doing. And it wasn't enough, I felt. Not that they weren't doing a great job, but I felt like there wasn't a space for them to all be together under one roof. And oftentimes, what you tend to see is, someone giving advice to one of these IEHPs, right, internationally educated healthcare professionals, about something, and oftentimes that conversation leads them to saying, "Oh, you need to go connect with so and so, or maybe you should talk to so and so," but that so and so isn't in the room, and so that then becomes frustrating. And so this year we decided, all right, we need to do it over 3 days, and instead of having one stage, we have two stages, and of course, the main stage is the RFL stage. And that's where the key programming and a lot of the conversations about licensing, credentialing, finances, opportunities around exams, and all that stuff are going to be had. But we've also invited a lot of internationally educated nurses and dentists and pharmacists and people in the space who know what they're talking about, so they can kind of direct them in that path. Anyways, it's a long question, but what are you guys excited about being part of the IMG conference this year? Because it's the first time we're having it.
I think everything you just said is what I'm excited about.
Nice.
Because it's just honestly great to find synergy with other organizations that are in the same space as us. Because you're absolutely right. When you say like, hey, I looked around to other associations, see, what everybody else was doing. They're doing great, but it wasn't enough. It's pretty much the identical story to what I was saying earlier when I reviewed all the clients who became clients, and I looked at them. I'm like, hey, so the banks and all these other organizations are doing something, but it's good. It's better than zero. Don't get me wrong, but it's not enough.
Not enough.
And I think that's where we really cut out that niche, and and I think that's what I'm excited about, just to be able to see how many there are. And the other thing I'm really excited about is just to see so many people, being a part of this conference. Because remember when we were growing up, it was that story, people coming from abroad, they're doctors, but they're driving taxis here in Canada. Now that story doesn't exist anymore, because now you can actually come here. The doors have been opened, the policies have been changed, and now it's much easier to actually start your profession. So I think I'm just excited to connect with those people, because I think the grit it takes for them to leave their countries and come back and come here and start over mid-career growth, and it's a lot, and it's a grind, and really what they're looking for is what they're really looking for is who can I trust to help me make this a bit easier. I
Mhm.
think that's what it is. And um and I think that's the trust that we don't want to ever break, right? It's kind of like what Charlie Munger says. It's like it takes a lifetime to build trust but a second to break it. So that I think is very important, and I think that's what I'm really just excited about. Just just be in a room with thousands of people who came to Canada for a better, because I think it is for the better,
Yeah,
for sure. But it's not easy.
it is.
It's definitely hard.
I can tell you from the last couple of years we've been running this, the general consensus for people is a sense of gratitude more than anything else. Because
Hmm.
whereas before, like you said, when they come here or even they're still abroad trying to figure out, what to do when I do show up in Canada, who do I go to, who do I talk to, where do I get the information from? And so when they come to this conference and they walk out at the end, it's just a sense of gratitude because now they kind of have that sense of direction. And oftentimes they come thinking they're looking for one thing, but they end up leaving having gotten a ton of other information as well. So
Yeah,
like I can tell you from most physicians that are going through the licensing journey, the first thing that's on their mind is I need to get a job. I need to get
yeah,
licensed. I need to get credentialed. I need to get into residency or whatever. I have to make my degree valid in this country because I have a family to support. And you said this before. Yes, oftentimes historically in the past, this is where you tend to hear these doctors driving cabs and driving Uber and working at Tim Hortons and just trying to pay the bills. But
yeah,
now that the system is becoming more accessible, and I will tell you, a lot of the big voices, a lot of the major stakeholders, policymakers, and we're going to have a lot of this stuff at the conference. They're all kind of, I'm going to say, falling in line. Maybe a
yeah,
better word to say that, because they're all understanding that Canada is built on the backbone of immigrants. I mean,
yeah.
it's not just in medicine; it's in every industry, right? And
Hmm.
so, why not tap into that talent to help our crumbling healthcare system? I mean, that's
Yeah,
that's another discussion for another day. But
that's
um,
another podcast. Yeah.
the podcast, exactly. What's exciting is, so for those that are watching, RFL is going to be giving two talks, and it's all on our schedule. I know you're going to be covering one of those sessions, and then Usman is going to be covering another one, I believe.
I think so.
Um, before I let you go, I always want to do a couple of. It's nice that we get to learn a little bit about you personally outside of RFL.
Sure. Okay.
So let's do a quick little rapid fire. I've got some questions for you just so that we can see what kind of person
Amazing.
you really are. Okay, so, and because you're a finance guy, I'm going to ask you some of these as well. So just tell me real quick, stocks or real estate?
That's a hard one. I'll say stocks.
Stocks. Okay, coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Coffee. Okay. What's one word that best describes RFL?
Fulfillment.
Okay, I like that one. I was wondering if you're going to use one of the letters from RFL. Um, I know you've written two books and you got your second one coming out. If for every physician, or ITP or IMG, if you would recommend any book after yours, what book would it be?
I can see the book cover in my mind right now, but the name escapes me. It's the Morgan Housel book. I know you know it.
Uh,
Uh, you know what? Just for that, I'm gonna search it for one because I can see the cover in my face. It's right here. But Morgan Housel book. It's The Psychology of Money.
okay, another finance book. Yeah, and that's what's interesting. Remember, doctors don't get taught finances in medical school. It's not even a topic. It's not a subject in medical school at all. Financial literacy, either you know it when you come in because you were raised in it or you had experience in it, but then when you come out on the other end of medical school, even after residency, you kind of have to figure all that stuff out on your own. So
which
finance,
which which is why The Psychology of Money is written for the person who knows absolutely nothing
nothing.
about finances. So all the concepts in the book is just like grade 5 language.
Perfect.
So I think it's a great book to start.
Last question before we kind of end off, but we are in FIFA this year. So what team are you rooting for?
I was at the 2015 World Cup in
Okay.
Brazil, and I've been supporting Belgium for a long time.
Okay.
But Belgium has just been like just absolutely horrible. It's one of those like they have all the superpower, all the firepower, but nothing happens.
Oh, okay.
So I'm gonna just say um, probably France. I want to say
France.
France.
Okay. All right. I thought you were going to
Yeah,
say Canada, but I mean, Canada.
Canada. I went to the Canada game.
Oh, you did. Okay. Oh, the
Yeah,
recent
the
one.
the friendly. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
the
was
friendly.
there. Yeah,
And how
so it was, yeah,
It's always
we're
hopes.
there. We're there. Yeah, we'll see
I
how
mean,
it
think
goes.
about it. The Canadian team isn't really Canadians, right? The Canadian team
Yeah,
is a
it's
group of
not.
immigrants.
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, if we're adopting immigrants into the national football, into the soccer league, I mean, there's something to be said about the landscape of physicians as well. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
anyways,
100%.
Saad, pleasure, man. I was enjoyed the conversations. Thanks so much for
Likewise.
sharing a lot of insight. We're excited to have RFL Wealth Management be part of the IMG conference and expo this year. They are our title sponsor. You're going to see a lot
Mm,
of them everywhere.
mm.
And for those of you that are watching, make sure you reach out and connect to the team. We've got a bunch of stuff that's going to be being released over the next couple of weeks on social media, just as we ramp up, because it's right around the corner, June 19, 2020,
Yeah.
at the Delta Toronto Hotel. So thanks so much, man. I know you've got to
Thank
fly
you
out
so
in a
much.
couple of hours. Looking forward
Yeah.
to connecting again. And for everybody else, if you haven't gotten your tickets, make sure you grab them before the prices go up.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.